A truly global perspective on what are the next development steps in fashion. On the panel, we have one of the world's largest fashion retailers, Inditex, is here, 2 small NGOs, and the most important NGOs triggering change in the fashion industry for many years. We have Greenpeace with a successful and well-known detox campaign, the WWF, that, as we have learned today, is pushing water stewardship into global value chains, and we have Bye Bye Plastic Bags as an NGO driven by youth. Say no to plastic bags, and Stop Micro Waste. We've touched that today too. Stop Micro Waste is a non-profit organization from Berlin, initiated by Langbrett, a group of surfers and nature lovers. And I am more than happy to have Clare back on stage. She's going to moderate this panel discussion. Clare, press sustainability editor-at-large. I love that position. So Clare, here's your stage, and the panel, please welcome on stage. Applause for our We Are Water, Ocean and Rivers panel discussion.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our last panel of the day, although there are still workshops happening, and you can still check out all of the exhibitors, I think, till 7. I would like to welcome our fantastic panel of speakers, the last ones of the day, but by no means the least. To my right, I have Alexander Nolte from Stop Micro Waste, and also Langbrett. Did I say that right? Excellent. I have Kirsten Brodde from Greenpeace. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I have Ángela Suárez García from Inditex. We're very excited to have you here on the stage. Thank you for joining us. I have Heike Vesper from WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. And we have Melati Wijsen. I did that badly. Please tell me how to say that nicely. Wijsen, who runs Bye Bye Plastic Bags Bali, which we're going to hear all about. The format for today is sort of in 3 parts. I'm going to ask all of our panels just to share very briefly for 3 minutes a little bit about their work with a focus on water. If they talk too long, I'm going to wind them up like at the Oscars when you're thanking your mum and the music plays. After that, we're going to have a really brief wrap-up of today. And then we're going to have a discussion. The title of this session is We Are Water, Oceans, Rivers and Pollutants. Where do we go now? So it's all about looking to the future and giving you guys some really strong takeaways from today. Without further ado, I would love to ask Kirsten to kick us off. Thank you. Have you got a clicker?
Thank you, Claire. OK, that's working perfectly fine. So I'm the one with the dark slides. So toxic fashion is always black.
Can see that way.
OK. So my name is Kirsten. I'm an environmental activist, and I'm leading Greenpeace's worldwide campaign on, which is called Detox My Fashion. Hopefully, all of you have heard of this incredible, successful campaign. And the first slide, the second one, is sustainability is not for sissies. Please keep this in mind, because when we started our Detox My Fashion campaign 7 years ago, we met plenty of resistance and a lot of doubt by brands, because we pushed them into unknown territory, and they didn't feel quite well. So maybe Ángela can talk about it later on. But 7 years later, I would say the picture has changed. We achieved a lot. 80 brands committed to detox. And this is representing more or less 15% of the global market share for textiles. So I would call this a success story. But I have to say, the recipe for success was really to aim high, and not to make any compromises in the very beginning. So all I can say is campaigning is not a very noble and polite business. And I think that's always a good idea for us, really, not to be polite, very polite in the beginning, but to ask something from fashion brands. When it comes to the big brands that are now committed to detox, I think our relationship has completely changed. And we have a more intense relationship. We are seen as experts, and this is, I think, a good way forward now to collaborate with big brands like the ones that you're seeing here, especially Inditex. So we will hear from Ángela later on how far they are. But when we're talking about chemical management, which I said is a big or huge success, I have to admit, of course, and you all know that there is a big elephant in the room, because all efficiency gains are more or less outpaced by the increased rates of consumption, of fashion consumption. And this is, I think, the most scary statistic that I ever have seen, because the industry is projected to rise from today 62 million tons to 102 million tons in 2030. And this means incredibly amount of resources that are wasted. So what we need to address, and I think here again, the fashion industry is most reluctant to address this, is that I think we should slow down the loop before we start closing the loop. Yeah. So this is for sure that the idea of Greenpeace's idea really to make progress, to think about slowing down instead of closing down the loop. And I think that brings me to the point that what I saw today is still, there are a lot of promises here, technological promises mostly. So, and I would really encourage you not to believe in magic. Yeah. So especially if I hear all the promises around circularity, please, I'm not against a sense of optimism, yeah, but please don't lose your ability to analyze things, yeah. Otherwise, we will be really trapped. So when it comes to recycling, mostly I do see that what we see is a misbalance in communication, and we will come to this later on. We should definitely talk more about extending the lifespan of clothing than recycling. So that's the last point. And what you can expect from Greenpeace, of course, is a lot more of unfriendly campaigns in the future.
That was a fantastic, strong start there, Kirsten. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. My name is Alex. I'm from Stop Microwaste, and when we started to look into the topic of water and what can we actually contribute to make it a better place, we looked at how actually do I change behavior, because after all, this is what we need. Replacing one material by another won't solve our problems. So if you look into scientific research on the topic, you find two main components. One is motivation and the other is complexity. So the higher the complexity and the less complex the solution is, the more likely it is that you change your daily routines. And if you look at this chart, everything on the right side above the curve is where you change behavior, and below is where you don't. So the sweet spot is actually where you see the blue area, because there you don't need be extensively motivated and yet have something that you can implement into your daily life. So and how do we actually try to motivate people? So first of all, motivation is a very individual thing. Some are financially rewarded, others think it's social recognition that drives them, others want to do something good. But what they all have in common is that in order to get motivated, you need to have a common understanding about the problem or its consequences. So we have established a Stop Plastic Academy where we teach company representatives and school kids on the topic, and the Train the Trainer program to raise awareness about microplastic pollution. So you see a couple of pictures here. And we come up with a couple of solutions that help companies to reduce, that help customers to reduce the complexity, such as the Guppy Friend, which is a wash bag that reduces microfiber shedding and keeps plastics out of the waters, but also others. It's not only when you wash, it's also when you do your household cleaning, because it's in the dust, it's a lot of plastic that we breathe. So we have a solution that when you do your cleaning up, that the plastic doesn't end up in the solution. Those are all solutions that are not going to solve the problem, but they make you reflect. they make you think, they make you become an expert, because it's the first time that you think, okay, what do I actually need to put into the bag? You look into the label, you look what kind of detergent do I actually use. So and that is the message that we want to bring across with our solutions.
Thank you so much. Ángela, take the mic.
It's a black and colorful slide, okay? Because we want to show you the best practices that we are putting in practice in our supply chain and in our business model. So this is just a summary of the main projects related to water. Microfibers, plastics, and also the wastewater discharge. So talking about raw materials, we are promoting the use of recycled synthetic fibers under our Joint Life program. But this is our current measure. This is a corporate big program for us now. But we are also working in the future measures. So we are studying and doing some research to look for the best alternative, a safe alternative to the synthetic fibers. We are also developing a pilot project with the Port of Vigo to collect the marine litter and try to make a viable textile project with them. And we are also preparing the training materials on eco-design for our internal staff because we have a commitment with the Global Fashion Agenda. Talking about manufacturing, we have two approaches. One is the push. We started with the detox campaign some years ago, so we developed our environmental standard, and we are now implementing this standard in our supply chain and scaling it up. At the same time, we have our pool, which is the Joint Life program. Only those mills with the best environmental performance can label the garments as Joint Life. So this is being really important for us to get improvements in the supply chain. And at the same time, we are working with different experts in the future measures. So we are now ready to launch a project with WWF in Turkey. And we are working with 2 Spanish universities on the wastewater treatments for the microfibers and also in the coating and how to find a common method to quantify the microfibers. And then we have the distribution of our garments, the packaging, and it's really important in this step. So we are implementing best practices through our Green to Pack program. So we reduce, optimize, and we create closed-loop systems for this plastic and the cartoon that we use. In our stores, we are now for the sales seasons, we are using plastic bag with a high percentage of recycled content. And the good thing is that once we finish this stock, we will use also for the sales season paper bags. Our e-commerce also has removed the outer plastic bag in all countries, despite of the weather conditions. Now, talking about the product, I think that we can talk later about the details of the Joint Life program, but we are promoting the use of best technologies that reduce the water consumption. And especially in the area of end of use, we want to highlight our Take Back program, which is being spread in many, many stores and is helping us to put the oil in the machinery of the recycling process. So we need to work in this area. So this is the summary of the projects, and we are working internally and externally with the different agents. Of course, if we want to make this change, we need to have the knowledge. We need to provide our teams and our suppliers the tools that we are using, internal tools, but also common tools that we are developing with CDHC and other groups. And of course, we need to have the will, the commitment, the detox commitment, but of course, the will. And externally, we are working with different NGOs and also with different stakeholders and suppliers and other brands to create these common standards.
Okay, thank you, Ángela. Heike.
Okay, so I'm coming from a completely different perspective as I'm a marine biologist, so I'm coming from the ocean side. And what I wanted you to show is, or what I wanted to remind you, and now here it is what the effect of plastics in the oceans is. And this is not just related to macroplastics, but to microplastics as well. So we have 700 marine species threatened by plastic. So it's a real biodiversity threat in the oceans. And the oceans are already threatened by a couple of human activities. So we do need to get rid of that problem very fast. So we already have 90% of all seabirds which do have fragments of plastics in their stomachs. And it's a painful death if your stomach is filled with plastic, so you starve because you can't eat any longer. And I wanted to spare you all those ugly pictures you might already know from the media, so I just put it one more neutral on the screen here. So when microplastic does enter the food web, so a lot of fish species do have microplastic in their stomach. It's 89 fish species and 48 of them, 48, yes. These are the ones we do eat, so commercially used fish species. So it's all coming back to us. And here on this finger, you see a small blue mussel. These are those mussel people like to eat, and you see the problem with textile fibers. So thank you. So it's entangled in fibers. What you can see here, so it's a problem for it. And we do know, even if science is just starting to look more into detail, what exactly the sources are, that synthetic textiles are a big source of microplastic entering the oceans. It's up to 35%, so then we have tires if you drive your car. So we have city dust, which is a collection of different sources, like coming from your shoes, or if you drive a bicycle, so you can't escape it. And personal care products, I guess that's the one which was really up in the media. If you use a peeling, so you have the small particles in it, but it's just 2% of the whole microplastic impact to the ocean. And I tried to collect some ideas for solution, which most of them, if you follow the day today, or the sessions today, you will have had a deeper dive into that one than it is here. So, but what you can see here is that we do need to address different levels. So it's not just one who can solve the problem. It's not just the textile industry, it's politicians, it's corporates, but it is other people as well who need to do something. It's for all ourselves, so we have to look into our consume patterns and the way we live. So and I guess we come later on those solution ideas.
Thank you, Heike. Melati.
Perfect. Well, I'm the last speaker, so I'll stick to the very generous 3 minutes. Hi, my name is Melati Wijsen. I'm 18 years old and a full-time change maker. But my journey...
Yeah.
Thank you. My journey on protecting water and protecting the environment, protecting the ocean, really started at the age of 12 years old. And I hope I look a little different than there. But that's me and my sister back 6 years ago now, when we were 10 and 12 years old, where we were inspired by a lesson at school, where we were learning about people like Nelson Mandela, Lady Diana, Martin Luther King. And I remember going home that day thinking, what can we do as kids living on the island of Bali, Indonesia? What can we do now? And for us, plastic pollution, having grown up on the island of Bali, surrounded by only water, only ocean, being part of the world's largest archipelago, it only made sense for us to protect what we love, right? I saw on the slides earlier that every second breath we take comes from the ocean, right? And I don't know about you, but I really like to breathe. So being 10 and 12 years old, it was as simple as enough is enough. We don't want plastic ending up in environments and places where it shouldn't end up, right? So without a business plan or a strategy or even a budget, we started an NGO called Bye Bye Plastic Bags. We learned that 40 other countries around the world had banned plastic bags, and we thought, well, if they can do it, come on Indonesia, come on Bali, we can do it too. And so we focused on a lot of different awareness campaigns, focusing on hands-on approaches like cleanups, plastic bag exchanges, marches and rallies through the streets, all the way to classroom presentations from middle school to university. And with a real strong core to education, having spoken to over 20,000 students and produced 2 educational booklets for the local language. And we also campaign with politicians, because that's, again, you know, where the change really needs to happen on a regulation standpoint, from a grassroots level, but also from a political level, and also companies and brands. But we expanded to more than just Bali. I think really after my sister and I gave our first TED Talk, it started being shown in classrooms around the world. And that's where kids in every corner, they were the ones reaching out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email, and saying, I want to do the same back where I come from. And so I guess I'm not really part of the fashion world, but I guess I represent a voice of our generation, the generation I'm a part of, which deals with a lot of the things that big brands cause. So bioplastic bags can now be found in 30 locations around the world. I think we're up to 28 countries, all led by kids in middle school, high school, and university. And this is where we're really kicking up the volume. And I guess my message to you is that us youth, we are standing up as your customers and as consumers and demanding change. Us kids may only be 25% of the world's population, but we are 100% of the future. Thank you.
I was going to say I want to clone you and for everyone to speak like you, but actually, this is what's going to happen in the future, because people don't want to inherit the rubbish that my generation has left in the environment. I loved how you explained that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to really briefly ask all of you to recap a little bit on what's happened today. I know that not every one of you has had a chance to listen to all the sessions. But Alex, do you want to just talk about what your experience is, just really briefly? Why have an event like this? I know you've been downstairs exhibiting. Is it useful? What's it been good for?
This is a chance where we can meet like players from different industries, and I think it got apparent throughout the day, upstairs and downstairs, that the ecological things that we have to solve, they won't be solved by one company alone. So there needs to be a multidisciplinary approach to it. That gets obvious, and I think. Even though that I haven't been up here, the talks that we have downstairs, that has tremendously changed over the past shows that we have seen here. So people come way more, and that's something optimistic to look to. Because whoever came to the booth, people are way more knowledgeable about what's going on, about their surrounding. There's hardly anybody here at the show who hasn't heard about the problem of microplastic pollutions. And 3 years ago, there were hardly anybody. So it goes into the right direction.
Okay, fantastic. Kirsten, we do a lot of talking, don't we, in this space? A lot of talking, but do we act enough? What do you think is your takeaway from us convening in a space like this to try to start more conversations?
No, I have to say I'm really proud of all the people working here in this area.
Great.
And I see some brave and fearless leadership here. And a lot of vision. Yeah, even if I sounded really pessimistic, but I can really see the progress, and I always see some new stuff. So I was impressed, for instance, by initiatives like I saw downstairs when I met with Claudia Lanius, and she connected with 13, I think, sustainable brands to do something against packaging.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I spoke.
So.
Yeah.
So there are some very small but very nice ideas.
Yeah, did you see that they're all using paper, collaborating on this?
I encourage you to go downstairs and have a look.
Yeah.
And of course, I do like the pre-peak as a format. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of things are happening.
Okay,
here.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ángela. I am excited, as I said, to see you representing the biggest fashion brand in the world, Zara, on this stage. Inditex obviously owns Zara. I come to a lot of things like this, and I've never shared a stage with Inditex before. So I'm very happy that you're engaging in this conversation in a forum like this. Why do it, and why don't you do it more often?
I think that we are communicating more in the last years, and it's not a decision in the company, it's just that the people is asking us about this. So we are really happy to be here and to share our our view and what we are doing. And of course, from my point of view, it's very important to see what everybody is doing. It's not only forget about your focus and see what other people is doing, because there are many things, nice and smart things that the people are doing. People that are committed to sustainability. So it's a good opportunity to have this overview and also to analyze other things that we should be taking care.
So what are some of your takeaways from this experience at Fashion Sustain? Like what are your learnings? What are you thinking you need to do more of? And
one of my main conclusion is that we are paying a lot of attention to the wastewater discharge because of our detox commitment and because of the deadline is really, really close. And we are working hard in that direction. We are also paying attention to the water consumption, water permits, water discharge, but now I see that water scarcity is the next level. So it's important for me to see, here you can like smell the future programs and the future projects, and it's very important in that sense to see what is coming.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Heike, just really quickly, what are your takeaways from what you've seen today and what you've learned?
So what I keep from today is to see that it's fantastic and impressive to see so many companies showing that it is possible to change the business.
Okay.
And that's good to see. And the panel we had before that one, so where they discussed the alternatives, is very inspiring to see. But my remaining question is, so how do we scale up? So when do we come? So it's not that we do not have to value all the efforts people do, and it's fantastic to see, but it's still not enough. So it needs to come out of the niche, and it needs to become large. So that's good that you're here. So I'm really very interested in learning from how you think it can be upscaled later.
Okay, great. I want to talk more about water specifically, but first of all, just tell us, why is it great for you to be able to sit on this stage and share your message? I mean, it's pretty obvious why it's good from my perspective, but what do you get from it, and what do you hope to get from it?
Well, I think that for me, I get to really represent a generation that needs to have their voice heard because of the time we're living in. So getting to, explore a little bit of an audience outside of the plastic or outside of the environment, but enter different realms, I think is really important. But also, I know talking about future, we're going to get to that, but I just wanted to ask a question back to the crowd and ask, how many of you here are under 18?
Raise your hands.
Take a good look around. And I don't say to point out anything, but isn't that interesting that at a sustainably focused, futuristic focused conference, we're excluding the rising generation. We're excluding the generation that has to deal with this entirely. So I think, that for me is how I can really, I'm honored to be a part of it and represent it, but I'd love to have so many hands up in the air because we're going to be the leaders, and we have to start from the very beginning, not after we've graduated high school, not after we've got that master's degrees or our first job. It starts now.
In fairness, for younger people who are at this event, they are here. I've met some really great fashion students, and we know that the next generation of students are really shaking this up. They're probably outside. They probably haven't got the money to sit down at the conference. But I have met them, and they are here. And, I think, obviously, the future is with the younger people. And you, thank you. I want to just talk a bit more about water. I want to take a bit of a deeper dive into this, particularly around microplastics. Until this session, we haven't had such a focus on it, and yet in the media, this is the huge story. I mean, single-use plastic was the Collins Dictionary phrase of the year for 2018. Blue Planet's raised awareness on this. I'm sure you've all read reports on the Orb media study came out 2 years ago now about the fact that 83%, I think it is, of tap water globally is contaminated by microplastics. This is the flashpoint conversation. It's all over the media. Kirsten, are we in danger by focusing so much on the vital issue of ocean health in forgetting about rivers, forgetting about other issues, forgetting about the ongoing stuff around polluting waterways with other kinds of pollutants like chemical toxins?
No, definitely not. There are always new issues popping up in the area of sustainability, of course, yeah. So microfibers are a quite new issue.
Okay.
So I'm not really worried, and I do agree that's one of the important things we need to talk about, yeah. And it's increasing. When I talked about increasing rates of fashion production and consumption, this is predominantly then we will see the rise of polyester, yeah, and synthetics. So we need to talk about microfiber issues for sure. And when it comes to chemicals and hazardous chemicals, yes, a lot of companies picked this up. We saw a lot of improvements in the area of chemical management, and still there are some problems. So we saw the replacement of a lot of hazardous chemicals in the last 7 years. Just to give you an example, the PFCs, the making clothing water resistant, and still we have a big problem with heavy metals. Yeah, we really have an ongoing problem with heavy metals, especially with dyes. Yeah, so it's not solved, but I do not see a competition, as I said before, because we have to tackle them all.
Okay, Alex, tackling plastic pollution when it comes to microfibers, though, is one of the hardest things that we can do. I mean, everyone's always saying to me, what do we do about it? It's almost unsolvable. Can we really just capture the fibers and take them out and throw them in the bin, and then maybe they won't go into the ocean? It seems like a long bow to draw. Does a guppy bag actually work?
Well, I think that's not the right question. Yes, it reduces fibers from shedding. It captures those that do shed, and it doesn't lose fibers itself. And it's a tool how to educate people on the topic. But we need to look at a broader thing, and we look into other solutions as well. As I explained, how we can change habit. It's also external washing machine filters are a solution, and we have also running prototypes. It's not technically not that simple, but it's absolutely doable. If you have external things to put them into appliance, it's not a very good idea because it doesn't work at first, and then secondly, you have to replace all the washing machines, which doesn't make any sense either. So and it's not only the fibers; it's also other sources. But there are some good solutions out there, and I think we just make things transparent and also above the microplastic problem. I agree with you, Heike. Scalability is a main issue, but we somehow have to make things transparent. Because what I see, and what I also see here, and you mentioned that a little bit, that we have lots of people use words that are hip and trendy on sustainability. And at the end customer, is nowhere near to understand all these things. If it's whatever it takes. So we need a lot more transparency to, not to fool the customer. I think that is a very important thing, because today everybody is to some extent sustainable. And we have to take that responsibility, and that's where I think legal and registration comes into play, because we need some boundaries, because otherwise everybody can claim everything.
Okay. Could it be that we just simply need to use less synthetics? I mean, I know that's a hard question, but Ángela, what is Inditex's take on how we solve a massive problem like microfibers, which obviously involves everyone, a collaboration? One brand can't fix this. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that everybody should be aligned when we talk about synthetics. So this is our suppliers, also the buyers, but also the client. So in this case, with microfibers, I think that the campaign started from the customer side, and now is going to the retailers and then to the supply chain. And of course, it takes time to get this mobilization from the retailers and the supply chain, but we are working on that. It's one of our main concerns, and that's why we are working on this alternative for the synthetic fibers. But we want a safe alternative, which means safe because of the raw material that is needed, that is not a competitor for the food industry. Because if it's sustainable, it cannot entail economic problem related to the food industry. So if it's coming from waste, and is some kind of waste, it could be considered, but also it has to be safe. It's not a biopolymer that at the end is a polymer and is not biodegradable. So we need to tackle both issues, the origin of the raw material that is needed to create this alternative, and also the biodegradability of this new fiber.
Okay, well, can we just talk a bit about pre-competitive collaboration? Because, as I said, I don't think any brand can solve the microplastics problem themselves. What do you have something you would like to weigh in with that, Heike, and also Ángela? What are you doing to work with industry, with other organizations to try and fix some of these big picture problems?
I think that this issue is being addressed also by the regulators. They are talking about these things, about the use of synthetic fibers, how to promote recycled synthetic fibers, and how to tackle the microfibers. It's an elephant in the room, but we need to find the solution, and I think that everybody, at least in the European Commission, and also the brands are taking part of this conversation, are looking for these solutions and these alternatives. So at least we are working on attending this kind of forums.
Okay, Heike.
So what we try is to collaborate. We have a science-based project, for example, where we try to find out with the companies or with the industry how to do it better, which could be a real alternative. So what we need to avoid is that we come up with other fibers, for example, with natural ones like cotton we had, so where we then have another problem created because you need to treat it differently. I know it's complicated. Everybody wants to have a simple solution.
Yeah.
But life is not simple, so we need to take our time to look into it and not waiting to act until we know everything, so we can do a lot in between, but still we have to look into the details. And we need to keep the spirit, I would say, like you pushed it forward. So it's back to ourselves, so we can change it.
I really want to talk about change with you. You've achieved so much. It's phenomenal that you've had this take-up, but then it makes sense because, of course, your generation wants to see a different world. Listening to us talk about the kind of little minutiae of all the different complexities of how we make fashion, what do you think sitting there? Do you think we need to lift our game? What can you teach us about making change? And also, do you think when you're talking to your peers about the fashion issue when you're talking about ocean plastic? So maybe answer that first. Do you think about clothes adding to the problem?
Well, to be honest, I haven't actually ever included clothes in in my talks. It's definitely more a focus on consumerism to single-use packaging and things like that. But it's interesting being here and just seeing how much of an effect fashion actually has to sustainability. And we're not talking about it enough, and we're not talking about change within the industry enough. And I think I'm really grateful you asked that question. It was kind of like a little relief. I was like, okay, I can say something about it. But, you know, like hearing all the little steps and the processes that we have to go through in order to see change, it's really interesting because it reminds me sort of meetings with governments at the same time. You know, there is a structure and there is an expected way to go, but we don't have the luxury to wait or the luxury of time because everything is happening in our lifetime. You know, my midlife crisis will probably come a lot earlier because of everything that our generation is facing. And so I think we're in a beautiful time in history to really say, okay, we have an opportunity. Well, we have this huge problem, but we're not looking at it as a burden. We're looking at it as an opportunity to start and not do 70% of the job, not go forward without knowing everything, but doing the 100%, doing the full circle, circular systems, open source, collaboration is key. It's not about competition. We have to understand that this is much more bigger than us, and not one person is going to hold the trophy. This is something that all industries, all levels of society, every age group has to be involved in.
Thank you. I want to, you keep getting the rounds of applause. I want to pull this back to the future We've spent so much time today talking about the problems that we face in the present, and some of them can seem incredibly overwhelming and difficult to solve. And as I said, it's not possible for one brand or one organization to solve them on their own. I want to ask each of the panelists to share their vision for where we ought to go in the near future to tackle fashion's thorniest water problems. Alex, what do you think we need to do in the near future to really step up action in this space?
Well, I think that we just start. I think gathering, and we are also involved. There are lots of initiatives where companies, also cross-industrial, but also competitors work together on the topic. We see a lot in Scandinavian countries, also in Germany. So it's happening. But all they have in common is they collect data and they try to find answers, but we're never going to get the whole picture. So it's just about starting. We have enough information to start now. And that's not, I'm not saying that this can't be solved by one company. All the companies can start right away and make their business model better than it is today.
In fairness, he did just start, didn't you? I mean, that's what you did with your company. You looked around and said, there's a problem with microfibers, let's invent a guppy bag, let's invent a solution.
And it's not, it's a solution, it's not the solution to the whole problem. So we need a mosaic of solutions. That's where the entrepreneurial spirit is needed. And it's just about, rather do something than complain and talk about it and see problems with it. So that's the message.
We need a mosaic of solutions. I liked that. And we need to start acting right now. Okay, Kirsten, looking into the near future.
I think it's the same. I really like to listen to Melati because I see this voice of the young people rising. I see how they turn their anger into action. Maybe you've heard about Fridays for Future and all the school strikes happening at the moment around climate change. So I would encourage us to look beyond fashion, especially when it comes to other sectors and also their contribution to climate change. And this is also an underrated problem of the fashion industry, CO2 emissions. So we need to open up and put the focus on climate change, which is the most urgent problem in my point of view.
Okay, thank you. So intersectionality of issues, that's such a buzzword at the moment, but it's obviously true. So looking beyond water, looking beyond our, I guess, sphere of particular interest at the time to make those connections, right? Ángela?
So for those that are new in the sustainable world, sustainable textile sector, I think that we need more transparency. The transparency for us was the starting point of our sustainable projects, and this is key. For those that are already being transparent and are involved, we need to put more effort in innovation in order to find solutions for things that are not easy to solve.
Can I ask you about, I'm sure everyone wants to know, what about overproduction though? Like, is that part of it too? Can we address that? If we're producing more and more and more and more, how can we keep being sustainable within that framework?
Yeah. About the production?
Like, do we need to slow down?
Yeah. Our business is based in the information that we receive from the stores. So the production that we develop is tied according to the demand that we receive from the customers. So this is an important thing, that we have a very small stock because it's based on the information that we receive in the stores. Talking about a slowdown, I think that the recycling process and technologies are key for the whole textile sector, not only for Inditex in this sense. So that's why we are spreading this take-back program and also working with the MIT and the different agents to find solutions for the recycling process, because it's the best solution to close this loop.
Okay, so innovation, recycling, collaboration. Kirsten, what's your roadmap for the near future to try to make this whole thing more sustainable?
Well, to not repeat what the others said already, it's more like addressing it to you, to the public. So stay patient, don't lose interest, even if it is not any longer in the media, so you know how fast it can be. We were very lucky that the issue became that much interest of the media for such a long time, because what happened, and I really love to share that with you, politics does work if there is enough pressure. So we had, over the past 6 months, the EU came up with a new regulation to forbid single-use plastic. It's not perfect. There's a lot of things they need to work on. But that was because of the pressure of the people, because people don't want the oceans to drown in plastic and waste. So that's what we need to keep up, so next to all the other things already listed here.
So keep up the focus and the pressure, keep being inspired, keep looking for the information, and then also pressuring, if you like the word, encouraging governments to then regulate to help us move forward. Melati,
And
fix the future for us.
well, to add on to everything, you know, starting now, power to the people. I think in every situation we have a real opportunity to turn back to the youth, move and make space on the table, give us a seat, and actually give a chance to our crazy ideas, because you never know where it will lead us. So I think empowering the younger generation and actually listening to them, providing them the space to be creative and come up with the innovations that we urgently need.
Thank you very much. Time is up. That is flashing at us. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I really appreciate every one of you taking the
Claire,
time.
you should show your secrets now.
Oh,
So,
what's my secret?
come on, how would you fix it?
I think, all right, I think that I liked your idea of the mosaic. We need more than one solution. I think we need to slow down. I think that we can still appreciate beautiful clothes, but we shouldn't be buying them to throw them away. I think we can share more. I think we can rent more. I think we can support beautifully made fashion. And I think we can thrive within the framework of actually consuming a bit less, dialing it back. It's only in the last 15 years that we've started to consume at the level that we do now. So I think it has to be all those things together. But I also think we need so much to work together. And there's no point pointing fingers. We need to all get together and talk and share, and probably share our clothes too.
Thank you.